Funding for this program is brought to you in part by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services.
Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Rose Martin here with our real life coach, Susan Harf. This is real life. When Susan gives tips, advice, and strategies to help us navigate those tricky events and situations we get ourselves into. And like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm so happy to see you and you as well. Today we are talking about something that you might not know. Did you know that nobody can make you feel anything at any time? Did you know that, Rose?
No, because I'm thinking sometimes I might be feeling one way, and then I guess I'm going to learn about it today, but someone triggers me and I'm like, uh-oh, now I'm feeling something totally different. So you're telling me that they can't make me feel that way.
I am, and I'm also going to say the word that you used, which is so important, is trigger. Because in fact, all day long, we have a tape going in our head. And that tape is a conversation between you and you. And the tape is reminiscent of everything you've ever said, thought, and things that have been said to you and things that you have thought. So what happens with that tape when someone says something to you, it can trigger what is already in your head or not. So we're going to play a little game.
Okay.
So, say something to me about, let's see, my decorating. Tell me that you've been to my house, you think my decorating is lousy, and because you're my good friend, you just want me to know before anybody else comes over that I need to change a few things because it's not working.
Okay.
Tell me that.
Susan, I really enjoyed coming to your house for lunch last week. Thank you so much. But you know, I know we're really good friends, so I wanted to tell you that I think you need to update a few things in your house. It really doesn't match. Some of the things are modern, some of the things are traditional. So I think before you have someone over, because I know how important it is for you to make a good impression, that you might want to update a few things, and I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Now, Rose, ask me how I feel about what you just said.
Susan, how do you feel about the suggestions that I gave you? In love, they're all in love, right?
I feel fine about them because, Rose, I think you have a right to your opinion, but the truth is I don't really care because I'm a good decorator and I think that I know how to do it and I think my house looks good and I love it and I love what I've done with it. And so you can like it, you can not like it, it's fine with me. Now, one thing that I noticed was because you're a very kind person and because you love me, you said all those things in a very kind, coddling kind of way. I'll even help you, Susan, you said. Okay. But when we're dealing with somebody who may be giving us negative information about us, who may say something else, not so much in a nice way, and I'm going to now ask you to do that and ask me how I feel. So for instance.
I'll try it again. Let me try it again.
Well, not the same subject. No, I mean, not about the decorating.
Okay.
Because I got something even better.
Okay.
Okay, so you know that my weight goes up and down, and sometimes I work on it and sometimes I don't. So sometimes I'm at the pool every day. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I procrastinate. So now I want you to say to me, you know, Susan, right now I think you're probably on one of your programs, but when I first met you, you were so overweight. I'm just going to tell you the truth. And you really needed to do something about it. And thank God you have. Thank God you're working on it and you still got a ways to go. I want you to say it like that and don't coddle me and don't say it kind of meanly.
Okay. Susan, I was noticing that you've been doing some kind of a program, but you know, your weight is really still out of control. When are you going to get that together? You know for your health that that's not good for you.
And maybe your friends may not say that to you that way, but your mother might, or your husband might, or somebody who thinks they have that purview, somebody who thinks they know you well enough to say it just like that. Rose, ask me how I feel about what you said.
Susan, how do you feel about that?
Well, Rose, to tell you the truth, I don't feel great. because I am working on it, and it's not an easy thing for me, and it's not one of those things that just comes naturally to me. Frankly, I would rather have a hot fudge sundae for dessert instead of an apple. And so, I don't know, it kind of made me feel bad, Rose. Now, here's why. Rose did nothing to make me feel bad when she was talking about my decorating or when she was talking about my weight, even though I may react two completely different ways to those so-called negative comments. And the reason is Rose's word, trigger. If there's something already in your head about that subject, and even if that was planted in your head 30 years ago by your mother, who may, when you were 9 years old, may have said, sweetie, you don't need that second piece of cake. Wherever it was planted, whenever it was planted, one of the things about the mind is that there's no time frame for how things travel through it and when things come up in your mind. So therefore, somebody can bring up something in you that was dormant, that you didn't even know bothered you until that moment. And so what happens is, when you feel uncomfortable, bad, less than, angry, mad, sorry, sorrowful, any of those things, they didn't make you that way. That other person who uttered those words did not make you feel bad. What happened was they triggered something that was already in your head. What's in my head is, Susan, you got to work on this. Susan, you got to get to the pool. Susan, you got to stick with your program. What's in my head is not, you don't know how to decorate. Rose, tell me I'm a terrible cook.
Susan, without being nice, without saying thank you for inviting me over. Susan,
that's hard for you.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to not be nice first.
Susan, I can't come over for lunch because I can't stand your cooking.
Oh, you can't stand my cooking, Rose?
I can't stand it. I don't like it.
Okay. Well, Rose, I feel sorry for you because I am a fabulous cook. And the thing is that it truly wouldn't bother me if you didn't like my cooking. It's okay. You don't have to like my cooking. Not everybody has to like my cooking. I love my cooking. That's who's got to like it. That's who's got to be on your side, you. So if somebody else is not on your side at any given moment, they didn't make you feel anything. They didn't start anything. What they did is they tipped off something that was already playing, the show that plays in your head, the conversation you have with yourself all day long. That's what's going on in your head. And the other person is a conduit in the sense. So you're ticking off something in me that may or may not already be there. If it's not there, it is perfectly okay with me if you have a different opinion, if you have a different outlook, if you have a different way that you would do it.
That's why the reactions are so different.
Exactly.
If it's something that you really focus on and bothers you, or you've been working on, or maybe you haven't been able to resolve yet, then those are the things that are those triggers. And the things that you're confident in, that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, then you're like, you brush it off.
Exactly. And that confidence really sort of spills out, not only in other parts of our life, but it spills out with those people. So for instance, what we do is we may avoid somebody who's close to us. I have had many, many clients who say to me, I have a toxic parent. And when I speak to them more about what does that mean for them, usually the toxic parent is saying things to them that they don't want to hear. And I know that the toxic parent isn't my client. They didn't choose to come see Susan Harf. I've got the adult child. So that's who I have to work with. And so what I say to them is, this can be fixed, but we can't fix your mother.
But are they bullying you to the point that you have to decide, you know, I'm not going to put myself in a toxic situation. I'm not going to let them bully me and tear me down. Or what I'm hearing you say is they can't tear you down. You're letting that happen in your own head.
Well, you bring up a very important point, because yes and yes. They're not tearing you down. They're not bullying you necessarily meaningfully. Like, in other words, they may not be trying to bully you. However, when you're with anyone and you feel beaten down, we need to pay attention to that, because sometimes you are being bullied, whether they choose to or not, or whether they're trying to or not. And bullying is an extreme version of what we're talking about. So it's like the difference between sadness and depression. If you're sad, we can talk about ways to get out of the sadness. If you are in a depression, we have a different conversation. If somebody is saying things to you that are unnecessarily
Cruel,
mean or cruel, that is a different story than, hey, I want to give you my opinion. I think that this dish would look much better over there than in front of you. Okay, that's different. Or, I really like early American furniture. I don't really like all this modern stuff you have around. That's a taste issue. That's a choice issue. What makes it change is the battering, the bullying, is what the reason that makes something different is because that is consistent, persistent, and it's in little tiny dribs and drabs. Bullying is never one big furious argument or experience. Mm-hmm. Bullying is, so you obviously didn't have your coffee today, you're really not with it. The next day, gee, you look kind of slouchy. What, didn't you have time to get dressed? Next day, so you were on the phone like for an hour, like I tried to get a hold of you and you're supposed to be working. Little jabs, consistent, constant, daily, that turns into bullying. Mm-hmm. But getting back to when it's not bullying, because when it is bullying, that's a different conversation, and we need
That'll be another show, yeah.
We need to have this conversation here, because that's also very prevalent these days and very toxic, and I do advise the end of that story, the end of that chapter is, no, you do not have to put up with bullying, and you should not be in a toxic relationship that encumbers that. Okay, but getting back to everyday conversation where people say things that bother you, the significance of that is when you believe that they made you feel bad. You made me feel so bad when you talked about my food. You made me feel so terrible when you talked about my weight. You made me feel so bad when you tried to rearrange my living room.
I'm some kind of awful.
So the thing is, though, is that, no, you didn't make me feel bad. But the significance is, if I think you did, what may I do next? I may avoid you. I may criticize you. Well, if you think my cooking is bad, let me tell you about yours. And that creates a bantering back and forth that sets up not only the other person, but you too. And that leads to what people say to me all the time, which is, I had an argument, Susan, and you know who I feel worse about, who I feel bad about and worse about is me. I don't like what I said back. So, again, when you believe that somebody made you feel a certain way, that is because you are putting the blame on them for things that you believe about yourself. And the next phase of that is when you not only blame them, you think the wrong thing about them.
Wait a minute. So if I think that someone else is making me feel bad about me, then it's like deferring some of my own bad feelings about myself on them? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And you may not be using the exact same language or the same bad feelings. So you may not say, well, your place is horrific too, or you don't know what you're doing with your house. But in general, you're going to avoid them, or even if let's say you can't avoid them, let's say it's a coworker and you see them every day, or let's say it's a close family member and you see them all the time. You will act differently toward them because you are blaming them. You are blaming them for your story. And so that's the bad news. The good news is, the exciting news is you can change this.
I'm ready. Okay, how do we change it?
So here's how we change it. We take responsibility for our feelings. When somebody says something to you that you don't like, instead of saying, how dare you say that to me, you take a moment and you say to yourself, I don't feel good right now. Why is that? Why don't I feel good? Do I Do I also think that my cooking is terrible? No, I don't. So that's why I didn't feel badly about that. I guess it's because I feel good about that. So when somebody says something that does make me feel not good, when it makes me feel bad, that's because I already am there. I'm already there with that topic. And so I need to do whatever it is to change that. So what I had to do when somebody pointed out to me, and here's the other thing, I'm going to interrupt myself. When somebody points out to you something that's not good, that is not as often as you pointing it out to yourself.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're always pointing these things out to ourselves. So the good news is, the exciting news is, when you point it out to yourself, got to get on that, got to work on that. I'm a procrastinator, I've got to stop that, or I've got to work on that. How can I work on that? When I said to myself, no more excuses. I'm going to the pool every day. That's it. Just like I brush my teeth, I'm going to go to the pool. No decision. I'm just going. And I need help with being on a good eating program, a healthy eating program. Do I know that a hot fudge sundae is more calories than an apple? Yeah, I do. But I don't know necessarily how to monitor that. So is it okay to eat one once a week? Is it okay to eat it every other day? I needed help with that. So I went to a program. And so, in other words, I need to do something about my concerns about me. And my concerns about me are more important than me pointing out what you did that I don't like, because 99 9/10% of the time, all you did, in other words, most of the time it's not a bully, all you did was point out something to me that was already there. Okay, I want to tell you one more thing about that. Here's another thing we do. When we're in a situation where we're blaming somebody else, we make you statements. We say, you did the wrong thing. Why did you tell me that about my house? Why did you say that about my weight? Okay, instead of that, we need to, when we take responsibility for our feelings, the next step is we own them. And so we talk in I statements. So if somebody does say something that makes you feel badly, this is how you say it. I felt uncomfortable when you said I didn't look good in that outfit, Mom. That is a way that Mom can hear you say that. If instead you say, you are such a bad mother, how dare you say that to me? That's completely different. She doesn't want to hear that, and she's not going to hear it. But she is going to hear if you say, Mom, when you told me that I look bad in that knit suit, it made me feel badly. I feel bad when you say that. So here's how you make an I statement. I feel this way when you do that. Now, one time I was teaching my teenage son how to make an I statement, and he said, I feel that you are wrong all the time. That is not an I statement. So an I statement is, I feel this way. This is how I feel when you do that. It's information. I'm giving you information about how I feel when you do that. People can hear that from you. What they can't hear, they don't want to hear, is you say, you're bad in some way, using your own language. You're wrong. You make me feel lousy. You make me get in an argument. I wouldn't be in an argument if it wasn't for you. You propel that. You start that. You keep it going. All of those are you statements. And they're usually accompanied either figuratively or literally a finger. And you know what? Nobody ever changed as a result of having a finger pointed at them. No one.
That's good, because I was thinking, when we opened, I said, well, I wasn't in a bad mood until there was a trigger. But what I'm hearing from you is that in that moment, instead of letting yourself trigger, become aware of it and become aware that the reason you're having that uncomfortable feeling is because there's already something. There's already something in you, and you're already there. I love the fact of changing the statement from you, and pointing a finger to saying, putting it on me to have the onus of it. And I think that's a pivot, right? To finally be able to do something like that. So very quickly though, let's say you're the person that's saying the mean things. Shouldn't there be something also in your own head you can trigger so as not to trigger someone else? Like, that doesn't need to come out of your mouth right now,
Absolutely, and that much we know. I mean, we already know that whenever you decide to give somebody information, think about, do they really need that information? And more often than not, they don't. More often than not, they don't need that information. But if you choose to go ahead with that information, then say it the Rose way. Say it saying, I will help you. I'm interested in you. I care about you. That's why I'm saying it. You know, one of the things that I used to say to my kids when they were growing up all the time, I used to say, if you think that I'm kind of a butt-insky, that I'm telling you what to do or that I'm telling you how I feel about what you're doing all the time, it's only because you just happen to be the only thing that matters to me. So, you know, I made it very clear to them that you're my priority. You are what I care about. I want the best for you. Now, that didn't always mean that I wasn't butting in. But my point is that I was trying to couch it with, this is why. Mm-hmm. But in fact, what you're saying is very true, that when you're the person giving the advice or giving the thought or the concern, we do need to think about how, if we should say it in the first place. But then secondly, you can deliver information using an I statement. So for instance, weight is a tricky one, but I've heard parents say to their kids about, and starting too early, about, you know, I've had many clients who I had to coach through, do not tell a 9-year-old you don't need that extra piece of cake, but because it sets them up for a whole lifetime of problematic behaviors. But if, in fact, you want to deliver some information that you don't think is going to be necessarily received all that well, use an I statement. So, I really care about your health. You are handsome to me no matter what. But I care about your health, and I believe that maybe you need to get on a healthier program. So, in essence, I care about your health, and I'm wondering if you should get into a program. Or another way to say things is, do you think you should? In other words, instead of saying, I think you should think about how you're always late, do you think maybe you should get an alarm clock? Or do you think maybe you need to be more concerned about that? In other words, do you believe this is an issue? Because that's really where it is. We need to find out if they think it's an issue. And if it's okay with them, nothing you say is going to upset them. You could say all day long you don't like my food and what I cook, and I'm going to say, okay, fine, Rose. I'll make you what you want. What do you want when you come over? It's not going to affect my ego, my feelings about myself at all. My feelings are too strong about that. And most people have their triggers. So that's why you get into arguments with people. And that's okay to know. You need to know why that is. But the second thing you need to know is what triggered that argument. And it's not that they have a different personality than you, or they're more ruthless than you, or they're more aggressive than you, or more anything than you. It's they're ticking off something that's already in your head that you dreamed up.
You know, I've heard people laugh in situations that were uncomfortable, to where if something came up, they would laugh at it, and it throws that other person off, and it shows, well, it didn't really bother me that you said that. Like, really? Oh, I think that's funny. And so maybe your reaction also, if for your own head and for the person that you're interacting with, can make a difference too, whether something escalates or more things are said or less things are said, and so where you can deal with it and move on. What do you think about that?
That is why you are a fabulous life coach right now. Rose, I can't even begin to tell you, you just entered into a new sphere. I could do a whole show. We will do a whole show about what you just said. You are absolutely 1,000% correct. Your response to what someone says is everything. And you know who it's everything to? Not just them.
Me.
To you. Mm-hmm. To you. Someone can say something to you that can ruin your day. And conversely, you can decide, you know what? They didn't mean it horribly. You're right. Yeah, I need to get to the gym. That doesn't mean that it still isn't bothering you. And that's the part where you need to take ownership of and do something about. And that's really where I want to end, is say, you need to do something about how you feel. They just tick something off in you. But do not disregard what Rose just said, because that means everything. How we decide to respond is entirely up to us. And it doesn't necessarily have to correlate with how we feel. And that's what that show is going to be about when we talk about this, because we were not sent here to uphold the moral values of the universe. And what I mean by that is, if somebody says something that you don't like, you have every right to not like that. You don't necessarily need to tell them, however. And that is something that we can talk about in the future, because there are techniques that I want to teach to be able to do that and do it easily.
Well, I'm going to do a summary, because Susan, I just want to let you know that because of this conversation today, I feel so much stronger and more resilient because of your advice in helping me know that no one can make me feel anything. It's pretty much what's already in my head.
That's absolutely correct, Rose.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Rose Martin here with our favorite life coach, Susan Harf. Go ahead and reach out to us sometime, and maybe the topic that you want to hear will also be something that Susan discusses. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.